If it was solely up to you, which champions would you want to be meta and played in pro play? So I think that's a scary question. But if I was to like talk about frameworks for like what should be meta in pro play, I would say a combination of champions that are exciting to watch when played by the best players. I think that's pretty important. Like as an example, the game's probably not in a very good spot if Yuumi is one of the best things our pro players could be playing. Whereas the game is probably in a pretty compelling spot when Lee Sin is one of the better things our pro players could be playing. And so I think that you want some degree of the competitive staples create interesting and exciting game states that promote aggression. The game is a lot better when mid laners are trying to interact with each other versus picking AZIR CORKI and having a farm off. And so I would solve for characters who are exciting to watch and promote aggression when played by the best players in the game. But I want to like qualify this with, but then also variance of character picks is also very, very important. So while I think it's probably, say, incorrect for Garen to be the best mid laner in pro, it is probably a great thing if Garen every once in a while can be picked in pro. Well, it is incorrect for, a character like Mumu to be the best character you could possibly play in pro. It's probably a great thing if like he has reasons to be picked every once in a while. And so if I could just snap my fingers with a magic wand, what I would probably say is the majority of games would have someone like Lee Sin in them, with the possibility for every few games to have a lot of variance with, specific character picks that could counter a meta or counter a team comp, things like that. Now, that's easier said than done. Again, the question was just like if I could do whatever I wanted, and again, that's all easier said than done. But mainly like the pro game being fun to watch, fun to play, aspirational, I think is very important. Like it's important that like when you look at a pro game, it is an aspirational situation where you're like, wow, these players are so good and I want to be good like that. And then again, on the flip side of things, I think it is also important that you have a variety of champion picks. So I don't think it would be good if like it was just like, yeah, it's just Lee Sin versus other Lee Sin every game. It's like, well, that probably gets stale and boring even if it's really, really high mechanically interesting. So I would want to make sure there's some variety in the characters you could go for. HotS sabotaged itself with Team XP. Yeah. I think that was the number one thing that brought HotS down. It makes me kind of sad. HotS is Heroes of the Storm. It is a Blizzard MOBA that was supposed to compete with games like League of Legends and Defense of the Ancients. And quite honestly, there was a lot of really good stuff going on in HotS. Their item system was incredible. Playing Blizzard characters was incredible. I don't know. I'm just a guy. I didn't work on it. So obviously I'm not going to have as much insights. But I feel like the thing that brought that game down and made that game not be able to really stand the test of time was shared experience. And I really, really wish they had tried some version of that game that didn't have shared XP. And for you to all understand what I mean by this, League of Legends, Dota, games like Deadlock, they live and die off variety. And one of the big important parts of variety and like, being able to play the game for 1,000 hours is that you have chaseable experiences that are different each time and not guaranteed to you. So I often talk about this in terms of the Vayne game. If you've ever played a hyper carry in Dota or a hyper carry in League or the fire guy in Deadlock, you're going to have games where you go 0-10 and you feel like absolute garbage and you hate your life and it's not fun at all. But on the flip side of things, if you ever go 10-0 as Vayne, that's a very different experience and it's very fun and it's very exciting and you're really looking for those big games where you pop off. In HotS, the way you get this in a game like League or Dota is the difference in experience in gold. It means that at a specific time, any given character is going to be a different level of power compared to other teammates and compared to themselves in previous games and compared to their opponents. And that creates a lot of variance and mix and matches of how games actually play out. What HotS did is they made it so everybody on the team had the same experience all the time. And so every single person on each team was not equally powerful, because obviously you had some late game characters and some early game characters, but every single character on each team was the same status at any given time. And each team could only have 1 to 2 differences in levels. And so you could get ahead of the enemy team, but you couldn't get necessarily giga ahead as Vayne compared to like how you might in League of Legends. And so I think this created the situation where many HotS games felt very, very samey, because if you were Murky and you were fighting Arthas, that matchup was going to be similar all the time because there wasn't variance in your power levels. If Arthas was doing good, Arthas couldn't do good compared to you or do bad compared to you, and he couldn't do good compared to his teammates. And yeah, I think that created a situation where the game would be very... My experience with HotS is that it was very, very fun the first few times I played it, but it quickly got samey. And so I played like, you know... And this actually, the same thing happened with Dominion for me. Dominion was another game that I felt like it lacked variance because people couldn't get ahead or behind. And so Dominion was a very, very fun game mode the first 30 games, but then it started getting more samey and less interesting. And I think HotS had the same problem. And so I've always wondered if HotS hadn't had shared XP, how that game would have looked. And because I think there's like a lot of really cool, really fun things going on there. What do you think about the idea of League having more maps like HotS? I mean, I don't think maps are bad necessarily. The question is that will the maps have a good experience? So a hard part about League... So people ask this a lot about League is like, why no maps? COD has maps, HotS has maps, Overwatch has maps, Valorant has maps, why no maps in League? And it's not that new maps couldn't be good. It's mainly like League is such a finely and tightly tuned experience that any other map that exists has to account for that tight tuning, right? And so as an example with Arena, there's a lot that has to go into Arena to make Arena work. Because it's a different map. Same thing with Nexus Blitz, same thing with Dominion at the time, Twisted Tree Line, stuff like that. And so what we've often found whenever we make new maps is that players don't enjoy playing them because they aren't the same core experience from the main map. I think the other thing that happens that's really rough is League of Legends, many players who play League of Legends, they're playing it for this competitive experience that they built up, you know, hours and hours of experience and time with. And so to go play that experience on a different map is actually like, it's like, just shocking. Like, you see this in Valorant. Valorant players will very, very often say that the worst map is the newest map. And I'll guarantee you that's not because Valorant constantly makes bad maps. It's because Valorant makes good maps, I think. Many of the maps Valorant makes is good. Props to the Valorant devs. But like one of the reasons that players often rate the newest map in Valorant to be the worst map is it's often the map that they have the least experience with. And because of that, that map will feel worse to play. Because it turns out that in a game like Valorant or League of Legends, there's a lot of fun to be had with mastery of the map, with mastery of the corridors and where you're supposed to stand and where you can do things. Like there's a reason in CSGO that for years, many players will just play Dust 2 and nothing else, right? It's just a thing where it's like people have more fun in games like Val or League of Legends when they're playing on a map they're familiar with, so that they don't have to focus as much on like learning the map and can focus more on the actual strategy and tactics of the game. And so it's this thing where whenever you have to learn something new, it can be very off-putting. And so what we found in League is players will often not want to learn a new map because they'd rather just invest their time and skill into the mainline League of Legends thing. Now, that said, one of the things we've never really done is, how to say it, force you to play multiple maps. Like, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I'll make the thought experiment. Imagine if, by playing ranked League of Legends, you were forced to also play ranked Twisted Tree Line and ranked Dominion. Like, you had, those 3 maps were in the same pool, and you just got one every game. Kind of like how it works in Overwatch or Valorant or HotS, and you just had to be good at all those maps. Because the ranked experience wasn't Summoner's Rift, the ranked experience was Summoner's Rift and all the other maps. That probably creates a situation where players are more incentivized and more interested in being good at the maps. It also creates a situation where Riot is forced to balance the maps better, because players are forced to play them competitively. Right? Like, one of the things going on there, too, is, you know, Twisted Tree Line wasn't going to receive the same attention as mainline Summoner's Rift. Now, again, I don't think that would have been a good idea, because it turns out that, like, Dominion, Twisted Tree Line, they did have some real flaws that, like, I think just specific Summoner's Rift probably gets better at. But it is a thing where if you are making people play all the different things, then and they're not selecting out of them, then like that's going to create a very different experience where probably at that point people start learning the maps and enjoying them more. So yeah, there's some hard parts there.